Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome to episode 2 of the Fast Motor Podcast. We made it more than 1 week, so we are happy to be here. Got a lot of good feedback from the first episode, so thank everybody who reached out, who watched. Excited to keep it rolling with episode 2. But the one thing is we got through that first episode and realized that we really didn't share anything about who we are. And what our story in racing is. So we don't want to get too detailed and long and bore out with it, but we wanted to give a little bit of background. So I will let my dad open up with that because his story is kind of what starts my story in racing. So, Dad, if you want to take it away.
Sure. Yeah. I think mine starts, before I was born. My grandfather was very involved in the local speedway, Meridian Speedway, which, you'll hear us mention a lot of. And then my dad just had a passion for racing and cars and worked on cars and hot rods. And so, he started with like a B modified, I think, back in, the early 60s. And he'd raced, but I don't remember a lot of his racing when I was young. And so by the time I really had any, remembering any of it, it was past it. But my uncles also raced, Don and Tony, and they raced at the local racetrack. So obviously I grew up wanting to race anything, and I'd race my friends, Scott and Travis Stewart, on their bikes around their house all the time. And so my dad finally bartered for a go-kart when I was 9, and I won locally over a period of time. And then the Idaho Midget Racing Association started up. That were like USAC-like midgets at a local level, and we could start fairly affordably at the time. And so I started driving for mom and dad at that point, and got competitive and begin to win championships, and kind of won a big race, and just kind of opted to sell out and hope that I could go find opportunities elsewhere. And so for 3 years, drove back and forth to California, 12 hours each way every Friday night after work, home Sunday, 31 times a year, to race midgets in the Western United States. And then got the opportunity to go back and race on Thursday Night Thunder in the early 90s against Tony Stewart and the late Kenny Irwin and Ryan Newman, and a lot of incredibly talented drivers that were back there. And then that launched the opportunity to go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, did my rookie test, crashed on the last day of qualifying at 228 miles an hour. And then that sponsor wanted to go NASCAR truck racing. And so moved within 6 weeks, started up IDW Motor Freight that's in the back there, and won in our, I think, 13th start in the truck series as an independent team. And that kind of really, launched that. Obviously, lots of hard work, lots of driving, lots of commitment, lots of really tough times there, but a lot of successful times too. And so what grew out as a passion is an opportunity to make a living and build a career. So super thankful.
Yep, and then that kind of all those stories and everything from your career is kind of what launched my story. Is you were done racing. I mean, you ran once. You're in a couple more races like right after I was born. I was a baby. There's a little picture of me at driver intros when I was months old at Martinsville, and then the Corvette at Watkins Glen for a 6-hour race there.
Yeah, Rolex 6-hour.
Rolex 6-hour at the Glen. I didn't really get to see you race hardly ever. So I grew up on the stories, and we went to races, and we got to talk with the people that you raced with, some still racing, some not. And I grew up on the stories. I grew up in the pits listening to just all of the great friendships, the family that the racing community is. Just got to, like I said, hear those stories, run around the pits as a kid, collecting autograph cards, just fell in love with racing. Didn't want to do it. I did when I was young, but heard a lot of crash stories, talked me out of it. So I decided I was going to play baseball. So I did that for my whole life and went on to play college baseball. Wonderful connections through that. I'm now a coach. That's what I do for work full time. I coach at a facility with travel teams, do lessons, all that kind of fun stuff. So baseball was my life, but I always loved racing. So I followed it. I was a fan. I went to as many races as I could. And then a few years ago, I started to do some photography. I see on social media some guys that would post, outlaw photographers, cars tour photographers, NASCAR photographers, like just guys, and they would post these cool shots that looked different and unique, and they made the cars pop, and they showed the personality of motorsports, and I kind of wanted to try it. So I borrowed my now wife's camera. Emily had a camera, and so I went to the Nashville Fairgrounds. Was the first place I think I really took pictures at. I took some at Meridian from the grandstands, and then I went to the Nashville Fairgrounds in August of 2022 and took pictures the whole night up in the grandstands of just their local show, and was like, man, this is fun. So I was editing, and then started doing that, started making relationships, making friendships, and that was what was so fun for me. It wasn't, something that I wanted to. I mean, people have been generous and have helped out and supported my work. Never wanted something that I wanted to do for money, because I just loved to do it. I loved to give back because I know how much the racing community had done for my family over the years and how involved that we had been and benefited from it. I just wanted to be part of it for myself. It was always something that I just wanted to be a part of, not just a fan who got to take it in, but I wanted to give something back to it. So that's kind of what I started doing. I started making some great friends, started doing some video work as well, which that has been really fun also, and has really even opened more doors as a service that I can give, and I can help, and I can do for people for their social media, all that kind of stuff. I would never say that I'm that great at it, but I like my work. I'm proud of my work, so I like to put it out there and just give something that a racer can look at and say, hey, this is really cool, something that they like. So that's kind of where my story has landed me here. And I guess that's a good segue into our guest. So our guest I met through social media. I took a couple pictures of his car, because I always take pictures of everybody who's there racing at Nashville street stock back in, I believe it was probably 2022, later at the All-American weekend. And we just connected on social media. I tagged him, and he was super thankful that I tagged him and gave him some publicity. And I was like, I don't really give you much publicity because I've got a handful of like maybe 100 followers. And so, but we just hit it off. We talked racing. We, became really good friends. And so that leads me to introduce. So Cole Baxter is our guest today. Street stock racer, kind of around here out of Bowling Green. Races in the CRA Street Stock Series. Even ran this year it was the Grand National Super Series with D2 Motorsports, with Jeremy Mayfield is very heavily involved there. Was really started to kind of make his name around here, especially in the street stock scene. He won at Anderson a couple years back. He's had some really good success. He's charged at the short track nationals at Bristol. And so, yeah, without further ado, we'll get Cole in here. Cole, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Oh, thank y'all for the opportunity. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So, getting into our first guest on the podcast. It's what we've really wanted to do. This is why we want to do the podcast, is we want to have all the guests, all the people we know. So just to start, Cole, if you want to give us a little bit, I kind of did a brief intro, a little background in how you got started racing and kind of where you're at, kind of the journey to where you're at today, kind of like Dad just did to intro us off here. If you want to kind of give us a little background.
All right. Well, my dad raced go-karts while I was growing up, and I was kind of more focused on baseball. And then over time, we started helping Dylan Oliver with his Pro late model, and there was a day, there was a bunch of car shows going on in Bowling Green and whatnot, and I was like, Dad, what does it take for you to build me a race car? He was like, oh, your mom ain't gonna like that. I was like, no, what does it take for you to build me a race car? He said, well, if you can get you a sponsor by the end of the night, I'll build you a race car. And I started asking him for phone numbers, and I could see it on his face because he knew they wouldn't tell me no. And so I ended up getting a little sponsor, and we uh, we started building the car. Got it done when I was 15. Started racing at Kentucky Motor Speedway in Whitesville, Kentucky, and I ran 7 races there and blew up in the 7th race. I was leading, and the fastest laps are always its last ones. So we just tried to figure out what to do next, and we were like asking the promoters if we could run a 602 just to get by for the rest of the season. We were trying to find a street stock chassis, just something to figure out what our next move was going to be after the pure stock. And we texted Rick Stamper and asked him what it would cost to build me a chassis. And this whole deal came through with me and Dylan both going to drive for Rick in his cars and for Stamper built race car chassis. And everything played out. And in 2022, I made my first start in a street stock at Anderson in one of the 150 lap races. And that would have been my 8th start in racing in general. So,
Wow.
Pretty quick. Get up
yeah.
to time. I mean,
Yeah, they talked about just how I was thrown to the wolves and not much was expected. And I mean, we ended up qualifying 22nd, and my motor was missing, and we had a bunch of problems. We were just trying to get to the racetrack, and just qualified 22nd and then finished 10th after I think I finished like 2 laps down or something. So it wasn't horrible. I mean, it was a solid first start with I think 30 cars started and everybody was within a second of the pole time. So I was pretty happy with 22nd being my first time in a street stock.
yeah, especially at Anderson. That place is no joke. And it's easy to go a lap down in a hurry there because
Yeah,
that place
it's
is,
very
place
fast.
is quick. And then, all right, well,
That's
go ahead.
just, how has it been since then? You had really early success. I know you. I don't know much about the street stock scene around that area, so tell us a little bit about that because I think it varies. If I could wish on one thing that the nation would have a set of rules for every class, so people would understand them. They could go anywhere. They could join in, street stocks or pro stocks or even late models or super late models. If you're not a fan and very involved, it gets confusing in a hurry. So talk a little bit about that if you could.
So our street stocks, they're a stock frame car from 65 to I think 88 ish is the range on what we can run. Any chassis, Ford, Chevrolet, Pontiac, Buick, whatever you want to go with. Um, they're built from the ground up. We've got, or in the past, we've had an open motor rule. You could run pretty much whatever you wanted as long as it was a steel block with steel heads. Um, and I think on half mile or bigger, after 412 cubic inches, you had to start adding weight. Um, and then, of course, we've got no spoiler. Our body can, or our deck lid, so from our C pillar back, has to be exactly flat or less. We can't have any wedge in the deck lids. Very minimal downforce, 8-inch tires that don't really last. high horsepower, low grip. They're a blast to drive, but they're a handful on any given weekend. I mean, like, I might as well be driving on the ice out here as I'm driving the street stock. So,
I wish I wish more people could watch them. Especially Nashville. You go down in the corner and watch them, and they're just in yaw the entire time, right? They're just
right.
almost sideways. They are sideways, just like every car on edge. Chad Chafin was a teammate of mine in NASCAR. He was racing the Bush car when I was racing the truck for Renzi, and Chad races those, and he's like, man, these are some of the hardest cars I've ever driven. Like, there's just no grip, and there's no arrow, there's nothing to lean on, so to speak.
Nope, it's all in the driver's hands, and I think that's what I like so much, is you can bring, like, the first car that I was driving that Elijah originally took the pictures of was 24 years old, and I had a 377 at the time that was way too much horsepower, and I mean, it was just like, it doesn't matter what you bring to the racetrack, there's a chance of you being competitive, because the difference in driving styles makes such a difference in how your tires react and how your car reacts. It's different from a late model where everybody's pretty similar on everything, and money makes a big difference. It's it's more in the driver's hands, and I like that a lot about short track racing in general.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean those things are wicked to watch. I mean, I've only got to watch them at Nashville. I've watched them like on stream at some other places and like watched like some replays at like Salem and stuff. And I mean, like those things they race some of the best racing in the country. And I've got to see some. I haven't got to see racing everywhere, but I've got to see some very different racing. From Meridian to Oklahoma to Nashville to Southern California. Like those things are gnarly to watch. They are so much fun, and they're really fun to shoot because you guys are all sideways in the corner. So it's guys just sawing on the wheel trying to get to grip up, and they kick sideways. Anything that kicks sideways on pavement, while it's not probably fun for the drivers, is like, oh, we don't have enough grip. It's like photographers love that stuff.
I don't know. You talk to Blaine Aiken, and he will tell you completely different. I think where he started driving that dirt car, he loves having it locked out to the right, hanging out there. And me and Blaine have been really good friends for a long time, and he's one of those that I was really thankful for meeting, because if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at. And he's a good dude, and he's a heck of a driver, and he's got big stuff ahead of him in dirt or asphalt, wherever it takes him.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that I will speak to the testament, I think you can add to this a little bit, Cole, that I've noticed just in the kind of the street stock guys, especially like the CRA guys that are kind of around the Nashville, Kentucky area. Like the pit area is like a fun place to be. Like you guys are all, it seems there's a large group that connects with each other and helps each other out. And I mean, like, shoot, you guys have all posted me on social media. Like, thanks for the pictures. Thanks for the videos. And this last All-American weekend, I had like something like 14 or 16 street stock guys that I was working for just from word of mouth from all of you guys. So
yeah, man,
pretty tight.
Everybody gets along pretty well for the most part. And of course you'll have something happen every now and then, and it gets a little shaky for a little bit, but at the end of the day, if you go to somebody and you need something, odds are they're going to do what they can to help you out so you can race, because our car counts, even with CRA, have been nosediving, and I hate to see it, but the guys that do show up, 9 times out of 10, you can rely on them. If they have something you need, you'll be able to get it from them. And I'm really thankful for a lot of people there. I mean, Dylan is one of the reasons I got to actually run at the last All-American. And then I can't tell you how many times Chuck Barnes Jr. and Scotty Earl Holbert have pushed through to get me something that I needed to be able to race that night. And it's not just them, but those are the two that I really memorized the most, because they've done a lot for me in my career, and I can't take that away no matter what happens on the racetrack or anything. Everybody that I really be around or am around, they do what they can for me, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Well, I think that's a lot what we want to do with this podcast is talk about real stories, really, there, talk about different elements of the sport that maybe aren't appreciated, not seen on a national level. I mean, we all see the snowball, we all hear about Chili Bowl, we all hear, and I was lucky enough to race in a lot of those premier series, but I would say the best race car drivers in the country are probably sitting in street stock somewhere, or they're just because the money becomes so, challenging. And we want to talk about that in a little bit. I think first we want to probably go to the rapid fire and just ask questions where we get to, kind of know somebody and get some topics. So Elijah, you have those?
Yeah, I got the rapid fire. So we'll do the rapid fire with every guest we have. They're just a list of 8 questions that we kind of want to ask everybody. Every guest we have on, we just want to see where different parts of the country, different stuff.
Right.
Some of them are kind of your typical. Some of them are a little different. So I will just get us rolling here. And your answers don't have to be like short, like answer how you want to. But the questions we'll just move question to another. So first one, favorite track.
IRP.
IRP. All right. I like IRP too. I've never been there, but we got
It's
good
a
stories.
blast. It's a blast.
Number 2, most memorable race as a fan. So not one you drove, but one you got to watch. Live, TV, wherever.
The Dome. It's the best atmosphere in racing in general. I mean, tens of thousands of race fans all there for the same reason, and you can feel it. Like, of course, being indoors is huge. I've never been to the Chili Bowl, but for y'all that have, like, I feel like it's similar in a way, but at the same time, it's comparing midgets to full blown late models and modifieds. I don't really know. I've never even seen a midget race in person, but man, those big horsepower cars in that small of a racetrack, and everybody's letting it hang out, doing whatever they can to make the feature on Saturday. Man, it's just there's nothing like it.
It's good TV, that's for sure. It's on my bucket list. I got to go.
That's St. Louis, right? And for those
Yeah.
that don't know, the Dome. And you also have been at IRP, Elijah. I think that's the first time you ever crawled was in the suite in IRP.
Yeah, that's true.
We do have a race there this year.
I know. Got to make sure that those dates work out.
I got you.
All right, your racing hero growing up.
Probably Jeremy Mayfield. Looked up to him a lot. Of course, he grew up an hour north of me, and he has one of the biggest stories of anybody to ever come out of Kentucky. And yeah, it may not be the best eyes on him, but as everything's come out with NASCAR in the last couple months, I think it's kind of really shown the better side of him. And I mean, I like to say he's probably the best race car driver to ever come out of Kentucky. I mean, he's been there, he's raced these guys, he's proven himself, and I mean, he was there until they didn't let him be there anymore. And I mean, great dude. Like, it doesn't get any better than Jeremy. He's down to earth, and he's to this day still winning races, still winning championships, and it's really respectable from Jeremy himself.
All right. Next one, a little different. Best track food.
Best track food. All right. So Anderson Speedway has a pork tenderloin sandwich that it don't even come close to fitting on one piece of bread. Like, it's every bit of this big around, and your bun's this big. It's insane. Very good as well.
All right. Indiana making some appearances here.
Yeah.
Favorite series to watch.
Oh Lord. I mean, I myself really enjoy the street stocks. Outside of that, though, Nashville's Pro Late models are they normally put on a pretty good show. When they have enough cars to make it a show, you know. But It's between street stocks and just pro late models in general. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Meaning behind your car number.
So my dad always ran, and I never really knew it growing up because he didn't start racing go karts till later. But 19 just ended up being my favorite number, and it just so happened that that was his number back in the day, and it always just fit right. So went with 19.
Did you wear that number playing baseball?
When I could, once I went to high school, I ended up with 27 because the number 19 jersey was an extra small. No extra small.
Jersey size and always what you're fighting.
Yeah.
Ultimate goal as a driver.
I mean, we all want to make it, like we want that to be our 9 to 5. I mean, I just want to be able to go as far as I can, realistically. I mean, I would like to run a few truck races, but really it's all just depending on my financial situation. Of course, we're putting everything we've got in what we have in the shop now, and even that's proven to be pretty difficult. So it would take a pretty decent sponsor to get behind me to get me to ARCA or trucks or anything like that. But I would like to eventually give it a shot if I ever landed it.
All right, last one. Favorite hobby outside of racing?
I don't even really have much that I do outside of that. I mean, of course, we all.
That might be a bad question for race car people.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's
not
all I
that
have
one.
time to do. I mean, of course, I sim race at home. I have a group that I play Call of Duty with when I'm not doing anything, and then I just work. So it's really just those few things bouncing around each other as I have time. So probably just playing Call of Duty with my friends.
Say iRacing counts. It's not actually
Okay, yeah. Then I mean, not racing. We'll put that there.
I'd love to get into iRacing, but it's something that I could do where I don't have to buy a race car. Although I've been looking online at like sim racing setups, not cheap.
They're not cheap, but I mean, I will say, if you can find one that's in a decent little price range and you got it sitting there, it's very worth it. It's very worth it.
I want to make sure that I get one with like a wraparound screen.
Oh, you want to get one of the triple monitors?
Because I like having the peripheral because I just got the NASCAR 25 game because I got a PS5 for my birthday, and I love the onboard view because it's challenging, but I can't see who's next to me. So like I can't. Yeah. I have no. As soon as like I have a nose on somebody, it's like I can't see them, and I'm like, if I had a wraparound, I could actually like use peripheral. Yeah. I feel like this would be beneficial to me, but
Yeah, you can find a decent triple monitor setup for 2,000, 2,500 roughly. Or you can kind of just go piece by piece, and it proves to be a little bit more expensive, but it kind of lasts you a little bit longer because you're not getting used equipment and whatnot. But I mean, I bought a used setup and I've put some money into it. Now I've got something that's pretty nice, but I'm a single monitor, like Logitech wheel. I'm still bare bones stuff, but it does the job.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that kind of sparks a question that I have. I don't think we wrote down, but do you think that iRacing, and because like we've kind of seen the rise in iRacing, like we got like William Byron is like the name that always comes to mind, is like started iRacing, obviously had the finances behind him, which is another topic that we're going to get into. But you got to start, race on iRacing. Like, how does iRacing translate to the real stuff you're doing, and how does being able to race kind of some other stuff maybe even help?
So obviously you're not going to feel it the same as you would a real race car, but it's going to teach your hands and feet what to do when you visually see things, and whenever you actually feel that, you're already going to recognize it because you feel it before you see it. And it teaches you how to react to somebody bumping you or your car's starting to wash out a little bit, or your tires wearing off, and then it can also teach you how to race people. It'll teach you some of your racecraft and how to set somebody up, and it's a very useful tool. Whether you're racing a front wheel drive or whether you're racing a full blown super late model, asphalt, dirt, whatever, it's it's a very useful tool, and I think it should be more popular than it is. And I mean, by no means is it not popular. I think there's been over 8 billion laps turned since the server started back in the early 2000s, I want to say. And I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people playing constantly. I mean, I say playing, but it's a simulator, and it helps people like me where I didn't have much experience and I started going to these pretty big races really early on, and it made me a second and 2/10 quicker over 2 months of having it, just by understanding what to do with my hands and feet and how to consistently do that lap after lap. It's I think it's the best tool you can have as a race car driver.
Yeah, let me ask that, because, when I grew up, there was no such thing, right? But, you got laps in a car. It was a lot cheaper probably than to put laps on a car. And that's why drivers, I remember getting close to, the cup level, and you were turned down until you turned 35 years old. Like, I mean, that was the prime age, because
Right.
that was the age where you would get enough laps that you could be, that you could handle that kind of knowledge and kind of wisdom and how it worked. And you'd kind of have your, enough maturity on how to race a race like that. But, they weren't putting, until Jeff came along, Jeff Gordon, they weren't putting anybody young behind the wheel of a car because they didn't feel like you had that maturity yet. So I remember listening to, I think it was Rick Mass the other day on the radio, and he kind of put his hat in the ringer for a cup ride. And they said, come back when you're 35. And he was like, 29 or something. And they wouldn't talk to you. So they wanted laps. And now, these drivers are getting laps in the sims. And I think you see, I'll be bold and think, I will say, I think you're seeing some drivers not do so well in the modern setup without practice laps, because the sim drivers immediately adapt from what they learned in the sim. The question I had that I've never heard asked or answered was, does a driver at your level understand the sim work they're doing at the cup level? Meaning with the crew chiefs, what they're trying to simulate, how they're doing it, like how are they testing with it, what setups they're doing. Does iRacing have that amount of setup or that amount of adjustment that, you're writing notes to say, okay, when I was at Bristol and the temperature on the iRacing said it was this was my setup. I mean, are you learning how to communicate that sim language to an engineer at the cup level, doing it at the junior level?
So, yes and no. So, you have the ability to go down to, I believe, 64ths of an inch on a lot of your front end geometry and rod heights and whatnot. But there's not really a sense of communication with that. I mean, you just go in and click a few arrows to change your setup. And I think that is the major disconnect between the skill gap, because there's people that know how to work on a race car and there's people that show up to drive a race car.
Sure.
The more you know about how to work on that race car, the better everybody at your team is, because you know what to tell them no matter what your car is doing. And if you can't tell your team what your car is doing, they can't make you any better, they can't make the car any better, and you're kind of just stuck where you're at. So iRacing teaches you how your car will react to this or that based on what you do with your hands or the temperature of the racetrack or where you're at, how much grip you lose over time. I mean, there's a million variables that still go into it, but it doesn't teach you how to communicate that with somebody else. You kind of just do everything in your own head,
Mm-hmm.
put it out there and see what it does.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I remember when I won the truck race in Nashville, we were there, couldn't get the truck to turn and drive up off like I wanted. And it clicked on me what I was feeling and what I needed the change we made at Bakersfield, Mesa Marin. And so Elijah's mother took all the notes of what I would say and what they would change. So like she's going through her notes to go, what did we change? Because we did something kind of non-conventional, with some setup, and put that on it. And that thing just rotated and then drove straight up off. So I had all kinds of grip and, we ended up winning. So, there is that, I thought about it today when we were talking about younger generations coming up. The Sims have become so popular and so important. But then my own mind went, gosh, what is, what even happens when they go into the sim, Chevrolet sim or, Toyota sim, and you go with your crew chief and you go with your engineer. Like, how do they even approach it? What do they do? Do they have a methodical process of how they start the day, what setups they put on it, where it's going, the long runs? I think they get, hours at a time only. And so, so I wondered if that's trickled down to where people know what is happening and how they're approaching that, because I really haven't heard it. So,
Right.
Interesting to me. So,
yeah. So, I mean, they've made it as realistic as possible, of course. I mean, that's their major goal, is to make iRacing a cheaper alternative for people who don't have the opportunity to go out and race, or people that need practice. There's a million different reasons you could have it. Um, but it does teach you quite a bit. And it's taught me a lot between driving and setting up a car. Now, like a couple years back, I could tell my dad, like, yeah, it's a little free, it's a little tight, where at in the racetrack it is. But now I can tell him, all right, let's take 2 rounds out of the right rear. Like I can tell him kind of more of a pinpoint answer on what we need to do to make the car better. Um, and I mean, that's just what that's taught me. And I really think it depends on a lot of your relationship with your crew guys. Where kids are jumping through the ranks so quickly, like 1 year in ARCA, 1 year in trucks, 1 year in Xfinity, and then straight to Cup. You don't really gain a relationship with your guys like that. I mean, you show up, you drive the car, you go home. And like all my guys, of course, we've got Bill, my dad, Doodle, and a few more here and there that help when they can. I've known these guys most of my life now. And I can go to Bill, or I can go to Doodle, or I can go to my dad and just throw something off of them and see what they think. And if they've tried it before and it didn't work, all right, we know. What can we do to make it better? Like, I mean, me and my dad have constant conversations during the season. What can we really do to make the car better? And we'll talk about it for an hour and a half, 2 hours, while we're doing whatever else we're doing. And
yeah, that dynamic changes.
yeah, I mean,
When your job is paid to win, their job is paid to win. You're not winning. How they respond to you, their belief in you, your belief in them, like there's real dynamics there at those high levels of, I mean, some of my crew chiefs lived with me, just because of how we moved, and that communication. And a lot of times it was, you as a driver, you need to know that they have your back, like they believe in you. When I went to the 61 truck, we had a crew chief by the name of Dave Fuge. And, that came on, and Dave came to me and said, "Hey, I really want to try some different things. Like Gordon's getting away with doing some really different things. He and Everham, and I really believe there's some good thinking there. But you've got to trust me to try it." I'm like, "Man, I've never driven a body vehicle. Like, I'll try anything. It doesn't matter to me. Double digression shocks, 1.5-inch drop snouts. I loved, and we ran like an 1.5-inch drop at Texas with a rear sway bar all hooked up, and nobody was doing anything like that. And we were rocket ship fast because I didn't have any preconceived ideas, but I knew he would also trust me if I told him what it was doing. And that's what I said. You can try anything, but man, you got to believe me when I say it's doing, something, we can talk about it. So, the sim racing brought up a good conversation that, Elijah and I had talked a little bit about, is the younger generations, the younger drivers. What we don't have, what you hear of in Europe is the karting success stories, and that there's these entry level areas, which karting's very expensive too. So I'm not fooled to say that that's not hard to get into, but there's a progressive way, a succession plan for talent to go up, and we lack that. There is no such thing here, right? And if I walked in and I had, $100 million, I could start Elijah where he's at today and get him in Cup, and there's just no doubt that he wouldn't make it because we could buy the way. So
Right.
and these are the challenging questions. What would you do? What would you believe could be a pathway so we saw the best talent in Cup? And that doesn't mean just, somebody funds this or a sponsor funds this. Like, is it more, is there more work being done with the sims? Is it more entry level there to where we're gaining knowledge? Like, I don't know. I don't know that I have any answers. I just know we have a problem, right?
Right.
It's not easily answered.
It's a tough
No,
one.
it's not. And because I mean, you look at William Byron. Do I think he's the other three Hendrick drivers? Not really. But he wins quite a few races. More than, of course, you got your mid-pack guys, but he's also in a Hendrick car. Joey Logano is another one. A lot of his early days was iRacing, and he's won the championship a few times. So
Agree.
it's...
is it karting? Is there more karting? Is there, when you played baseball, you guys started in Little League, and then there was, either Babe Ruth or some travel ball, which then, begins to get some cost, but pretty low entry level, compared to some things. But, if you were an inner city kid, you couldn't go play travel ball and buy a $300 bat. So, that's why baseball falls out of, a lot of inner city stuff, and it's more basketball, or it's, because there's opportunity there in sponsorship. So, money is everywhere, right? And it drives success. Elijah works for a private club where kids get taught how to pitch a baseball, throw a baseball from, a collegiate athlete, and that's had that same coaching. So we all know that there's steps, but when I did it, Cole, even though I came from very middle blue collar family, we could just work on my car. My first midget weighed 1,241 pounds. A Volkswagen midget that I raced against weighed 800 pounds. Like, I was like, the huge fat kid in the way that they just couldn't knock out of the way half the time. So, and then we got a little bit better, but, a lot of my stuff was still like the block that was in the midget that I drove was JB welded, because it was actually in a boat that had frozen and knocked all the soft plugs and cracked, but it's what we could afford.
Right.
And now if you don't go into the Chili Bowl with a Stanton or a, maybe an Esslinger there, but a Toyota, which are $40,000 to $65,000 engines, you're not competing. And then you built a brand new lightweight chassis because you couldn't just run a normal chassis.
Right.
So, money is taken away, and I can't blame it. If people can spend it and they can do it, it's so be it. someday we're going to watch cup racing, and it used to be, I don't know, maybe it wasn't the best drivers back in the day. They were just the drivers that lived in the South and kind of did it. And, there were guys out West that would never get a shot,
Right.
But I'd like to believe that when you see those top tier drivers, that they're the best. So, I think you brought up some really interesting points about the sim stuff that I hadn't really thought of how much it helps a young driver and what iRacing's done. Maybe there's more. Maybe iRacing's really done, but there needs to be some sponsorship paths to take an iRacing star and give them opportunity. And I don't think that means throwing them in cup or a truck right at the get-go, right?
Right. No, I mean, even the late model level, it still feels like you're jumping the gun because, yeah, you might have turned 5 million laps on a simulator, but you've never sat in a real race car.
Yeah.
So where do you offset knowing that you're good on a simulator versus thinking you can be good in a car? Just right off the bat. I still think there should be some entry-level experience for even the guys that are likely to hop out of a simulator and do good in Xfinity or ARCA or trucks, wherever they decide to go first. And I mean, I think the major series need to, and it's hard to because the world revolves around money and there's no way to ever change that now. But I feel like they should pull back away from that strictly money standpoint and look more towards true talent to get more eyes back to the sport, because now it's just, oh, who has more money? Is it this guy or this guy? Or who's in a better car this weekend compared to what they can do? And I mean, it's kind of made a clown of racing in general because everybody sees NASCAR and like talking to me, they're like, oh, I don't like NASCAR. And I'm like, well, I mean, what I do is a lot different from NASCAR. Mine is more similar to back when NASCAR was in its prime, like in the late 80s, and these guys were just coming up. And I mean, it takes a lot of talent to drive the cars that we drive at these short racetracks. Like, I mean, they're going a whole lot faster for sure.
Yeah,
but
I won't take away from a lot of those guys. Like William, I think William's one of the better ones. I think he's super sharp. I think that kid is a fantastic driver. And I won't take away from the cup guys. I just don't know what it looks like, right? I don't know if all of a sudden you took a bunch of Kyle Larsons in there and they're good. And that doesn't make, Kyle Larson can jump in anything and figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know that it makes him, the best race car driver in the world, because sometimes it's about communication. Sometimes it's about making sure you give feedback correctly.
Right.
I think he just can drive. Now, he might be the best driver. I don't know that he's the best racer. He's an ungodly talent. I'm not knocking a thing off that kid. I think you get William. He might be great from the sim to the car. And in this era of all your test work is done on a sim, that communication and that transfer is greater with him. So it still makes him a great race car driver. Here's what I think we lack. I think we lack those that come with money become entitled, and they're not thrilled to. When I got there and I didn't get to the cup level, man, you were proud. You were thankful. You were getting to race for a living, man, and it was an honor to be able to be on those trucks driving in and be part of there. Now, right. Some drivers I don't see that way, and so that resonates to fans saying, that guy doesn't even care to be here. He didn't. It wasn't blood, sweat, and tears to get him there.
Right.
And in the blue collar American, who probably is your NASCAR fan for the most part, wants to see somebody who worked hard, wanted to see somebody who gave it their all and made it. Right. And that's what racing was, right? That was there was engineering, and sometimes that was in a garage, but there was engineering, there was, hard work and blood and sweat to get there. And, that was appreciated and respected. And now the sport's changed and the fan hasn't, right? The drivers have. And I think there's that lack of connection. Not completely. There's some super good dudes. There's a lot of talent there. There's just, is there an opportunity for the great talent to find their way there? That's what we lack.
And of course, I've started spotting for Jackson McLaren with the ARCA Menard series, and I've seen that firsthand. So Max Reeves, that drives for Joe Gibbs, that kid has no personality, none whatsoever. He shows up, he tells him he's going to win, and he goes and wins, and then he goes home. He doesn't communicate. Once he gets out of the car, he goes in the hauler, sits there. Once it's time for him to get back in the car, he comes back outside. And I mean, it's hard to respect somebody like that. I mean, yeah, he's winning races in ARCA, but does he know what he's talking about when he goes in that hauler and talks to Bobby? Like, it's hard to get behind somebody when they have no personality and they act like they don't even want to be there. Like drivers meeting, he just sits up against the wall, looks down at the floor. Like, I'm all for a young kid making it and being competitive, but when you have nothing for somebody to relate to you as a person behind you or about you, it makes it really hard to gain a fan base.
Yeah.
So somebody like Kyle Busch, a lot of people don't like Kyle. There's a lot of people that like Kyle, but it's because he has a personality. Nobody talks about Max Reeves, but Kyle is on his way out, and he is still talked about because he's always had a personality.
Yeah.
And I mean, the sport is losing that in general.
Yeah,
And
what's funny? I mean, and I'll defend it in some ways. I think there are some of those personalities there. We had an era where we masked the personalities. Jimmy Johnson is a fun dude, right? Like, he is a fun guy. But a lot of people didn't respect what he did on the racetrack because they thought he was like just polished, buttoned up, never had fun, was this guy. Like, if you hear the backstories, that guy had a blast. Like, but that personality was rarely seen outside of behind the stage. And, Elijah and I talked on the first episode about Drive to Survive. And we were like, all of a sudden you have new fans because they got to know the personalities. I mean, like, they're young guys that are funny and huge personalities, and they're putting themselves out there, and people are getting to see that, oh my God, I love, Max Leclerc, or Charles Leclerc. I mean, mixing up a couple of them. I got a new one. Like, Elijah used to have his favorite driver was Ricky Harvin Run.
So Rick and Harvin Run, mix of Ricky Craven and Kevin Harvick.
So, but like Charles, or and then Max doesn't have much of a personality. Max just tells you he's going to win, and he's going to go win, and he's that good, and he's kind of got that tougher personality. But you see a little bit of charm behind the scenes with him, and then so I think. And I know NASCAR's working on that. They're working on making some of the new stars, making them so they're relevant to the people, because we only talk about the winners. We only talk about those 5 guys up front. And sadly, that's all we talk about. We talk about what we don't like about the sport anymore, more than we talk about what we like about it. And then we only talk about the drivers that are up front or that are controversial. We don't talk about, like William Byron, during COVID, Elijah needed to do an interview with somebody, and a friend of ours, Amy got
paper.
Yeah, and he made himself available for Elijah. It was just fantastic. Like,
a good dude.
but William's just a nice kid on TV, does his job, there, and we're not seeing who they are. And whatever, if that's them, if it's the sport or whatever's protected that backside. And, and then I feel like the fans are short-sighted. They're seeing the cup stuff, but no one's watching the cars at, Hickory or Nashville or, and then, we look at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Like, man, you go back into the 70s and the 80s from the fanfare of I heard what Nashville Fairgrounds was, like when Darrell, Sterling, all those guys would go visit that place. I mean, I just imagine that place packed. Yeah. And now, I've been there and the fan base is small and weak. And I don't know how we connect to those fans again. Or what we need to do. And I guess that would be the second question. What do you think these tracks need to do to draw fans?
I mean, the big thing is targeting a younger audience, I think. The more kids or teenagers that you get involved with something like this, the more likely they are to come back. If you try to not really engrave in their mind that this is something that happens, but kind of make it become a regular thing in their life to consider, hey, racetrack's open. Why don't we go watch some races? Or why don't we go to the pits and maybe talk to a few of these drivers? But nowhere really advertises towards a younger audience. They just throw out a schedule for whatever race day or their season. And, hey, y'all come on out for family night. Well, only the guys that follow the racetrack on Facebook or Instagram or see it every now and then on TV maybe or on the radio, they're the only people that see that. Like, I don't even know when family night is when I go to the racetrack because I don't really dive into the social media things just because it's not a regular thing that you see. Like, they'll make one post about it and then it's over with. So
what about opening the pits before the races start that night? So the young kids get to come and meet the driver, see the car, take a picture of the car. Then when they're watching the race that night, they met you.
Yeah.
And they are coming back, man. Like I mean, let's reverse it. I mean, Elijah and I talk about Meridian Speedway is phenomenal. The races are over by 9:30. The garages are open. People are lined up to go to the pits. And they hang out, and there's autograph, there's candy, there's stuff. And it's like, it's great. That's a great way to end the night. But what if there was a part of that was before the night started? So a kid got to sit in a car, and then he gets to watch that race. That connection is tenfold of what it is the other way. So, right. I mean, I think, and that's, what we want to talk about here is, ways to think. I know on social media, even that they're doing Facebook, they're doing this. They probably have their nephew or their cousin posting it because they're on social media some. There's nothing about the metrics on the back end. There's nothing about trying to achieve, get new fans. Few are treating it like a business on that way, but they can't advertise in the paper because there are no local newspapers. They can't advertise, in the phone book because there's no phone books. Like, there's no TV commercials because they're either too expensive or there's a million streaming channels. So where do you spend your dollar? So tracks are lost on how to advertise or market. So they just keep marketing to the same echo chamber that they always have. And likely that echo chamber is dying away. And we don't have that young, youthful fan. And
right.
So
I would like, and this is just one idea, but partner with some schools. Like, schools do fairs and all this stuff. It's like, hey, race night. If you show up with your student ID from this or this middle school or this high school or this elementary school, I don't even know if elementary schoolers have school IDs, but if you go to this school, free admission to the races tonight, and we're gonna do we're gonna I mean, they used to do it like Turkey Night. They'd have all the cars parked out on the front stretch. They did it at Irwindale. They did it at Paris before the races. And there was an autograph session. All the drivers were suited up. They were with their cars, and you got to go see those cars, like you said, before they race. Or even it's an after thing. And every car, every driver has to stay at least an hour after. Because, again, like Nashville, like Meridian, runs a very efficient show. Races are over 9 o'clock, 9:30 most times. But then there's a line of haulers that are loaded up, ready, waiting to get out as soon as that final checkered flag flies. It's like there's no culture built to, hey, we're going to reach these fans. Right. And I think that, you got the fan aspect of it, of you get more young eyes that are invested. Eyes bring money. And if we're going to go the money route, we get more eyes back on the sport. Now a sponsorship isn't as much of a financial risk for a company. So maybe they will put some money behind, hey, a real talent that has proven himself at this local level. These kids, he's got a huge fan base because these people can relate to him. That's going to help us going forward. Like make it an investment, not just hey, thanks for the check. Here's your seat.
Right. And
things.
There's a school here that had me come talk. So they have a group called Boys to Men, and it's an elementary school, and they had me come in and just kind of tell them what I do, about who I am, and they asked a bunch of questions and whatnot, and I mean, I really enjoyed that, and I handed them out like stickers of my number that we had made, and I mean, everybody seemed like they really enjoyed that, and I mean, they were all involved. Like, I had kids asking me questions that I didn't even know they would understand the concept of, like asking me about G forces and all this, and I'm like, you're in fourth grade. I didn't really expect to be answering high school level questions,
Drive to Survive or something like that. Like they've got a place to go see those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I tried to get them to come together, like, hey, go to your parents, get them to look up Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway or something like that. Come to the racetrack, experience it for yourselves, because there's no better way to see if you like something than being there with it. And even Nashville, it's $10 admission for the grandstands, and there's on an average night 150 people sitting out there.
Yeah,
looks like that's miserable.
Yeah. So that'll lead me to ask, kind of, what would be like, how do we get more fan engagement? What parts of racing that maybe aren't highlighted do you think that we could do a better job of highlighting? And how do we do that? Like, what are some of your, like, you can even answer some, what are your some of favorite aspects of motorsports, of racing, that the general public doesn't understand because nobody's showed it to them? What should we show them, and kind of how do we show them?
I mean, I feel like many people don't know people like us more of on a personal level that are looking from the outside in. I mean, they see what our personalities are if we get interviewed in the top 3 or throughout the day. But none of us know, or none of them know, like, we work the same job as you. Like, we go home and do the same thing as you. Like, we don't live on these shiny pedestals. We're the same as everybody else sitting out there. We've got our hobby, and we want to put on a show for these people, and we want to compete with these other race car drivers. We want to see what we can do compared to them. And I mean, it's the same as any other sport. Like, we want to be the best that we can be, but we want to put on a show for the people because we want them to be interested, and we want to be something to somebody to look up to. Like, I didn't grow up the most financially stable or anything. Like, there was 6 of us living in a 3-bedroom house, and I mean, we've come a long, long way from that, and I'm thankful that I grew up feeling that, because I know I understand the difference of what it's like to be at the very bottom compared to not really the top, but in a good spot and able to tell somebody else my story to help them see that no matter what, you can push through and get where you want to be. Because this has always been my dream, but nobody lets that out to hardly anybody in general. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way to build a relation when the racetrack focuses on themselves and then the three cars that are leading the race.
It is sad. It's sad in today's world of social media that we're not doing a better job of telling those stories, because those stories can easily be told. They can easily be captured. They can be broadcast, by the masses, right? Everybody's out there telling their story. Like I can find, you ask me any question, I can find somebody talking about it on there. But racers, one, are pretty humble for the most part, and they're busy working on their cars, so they're not busy building social media empires. I mean, some are, and they're racing in the truck series, and they're off their goods, but they're prettier than we are. So and good for them, right? They've worked hard. Right. They've done it. I'm not knocking it. It's just there is a tool there to tell those stories, just like you are. And the racetracks need to be doing it, right? Drivers are not going to do it. Drivers are not going to, tell their story. They're not going to do it. I remember being in NASCAR and they were like, hey, we need to do this. And those guys are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not bragging about myself. I'm not talking about myself. Right. It's like, that's your job now. Like, sorry. So, Elijah knows what some things that I'm working on the back end. And it's just this, how do we, one, if we're going to build racetracks up, we need to use the social media empire to build racetracks up. And the way to build racetracks up or build the drivers up. And if we build the drivers up, the drivers will share that information. Just like Elijah, he wanted to give back to the sport. So he made videos so you guys could share them, and you share them immediately because they're cool. And it makes you look like a hero. I mean, like, we all wanted that. There used to be a husband and wife, Mike and Nan author, that did photos at the Copper World Classic in Arizona. And they had the big world, the globe behind it and the car coming head on, and it said the Copper World Classic on it. And you couldn't wait to go there because they gave you the coolest pictures. I mean, Elijah's seen them.
Yep.
And, you didn't get real nice pictures at a lot of places. So the next day they would come and bring those around, and it made you feel like you'd reached something, that you'd got there. And so, Elijah's videos and ways to tell driver stories, I think, is incredibly important. Because fans can connect to you. Drive to Survive isn't turning heads and getting fans because the racing looks cooler. It's because people know who sits behind the wheel of that race car.
Yeah.
And NASCAR has to do a better job of that. And they're trying to pay the drivers now to do it. And that's not going to work in my mind because they should do it for free.
Yeah.
So there's the social media platforms are a lot of them are not good. They're not telling the stories, and I get why. They're private people. I totally get it, but there's on the local level, it's got to happen.
Right.
It has to start there.
Well, they got to tell like what you've done, even your life, and overcome. Just what you just said is incredibly meaningful in today's world. Wasn't easy. You didn't grow up. It wasn't perfect that time, but you're a great young man. You've achieved great things. You have some hard work ethic, good morals. Like, you're a good human being. That's a great story in today's world. And, then to put you behind the wheel of a race car and go out and wheel it like you do is fun. I mean, I've loved to get to know the guys that Elijah's taking pictures of now, because they're just down to earth, man. It's like what I grew up racing against. And it's not just racing, it's mankind. So, thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing your story, sharing your insights. I think it made me think, on the sim stuff and what it is and what drivers are going through and how they're thinking. And that's what we're doing this for. Is Elijah and I like to talk racing, and it's kind of our racing. You and your dad get to do it around a race car, and we get to do it talking about the sport.
Right.
So we appreciate you coming on, being our first guest. We like to try to keep the show to an hour because it's about 10,000 steps for those walking and listening on the podcast.
Right.
A friend of ours, Mike Miniger, let me know last week that it was 9,994 steps or something like that, doorstep to doorstep. So I think it's important. We don't want to overtake, people only have so much time to give.
Right.
So it get hard. So we'd love to have you back sometime, Cole. Thank you for coming on, especially at a moment's notice. And it's been really insightful.
Yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate both of y'all. Elijah, everything you've done for me for the last 4 years, and I hope for many, many more memories. Randy, it was a pleasure meeting you at the All-American a couple years ago. All the kind words and everything. I mean, you've supported my social medias ever since, and your whole family has. It's not just you two, and I mean that means a lot to me as a small guy. Like I want to do this for a living, but I couldn't do it without people like y'all, even at the level I'm at. So I really appreciate the Tolsmas as a whole, and like I said, I hope we have many more memories.
Yeah, we will for sure. You can count on me always being at the races. Before we get off, kind of just last thing, if you any sponsors you want to shout out, I wanted to shout out one because they're a fellow podcast, and I know they're a big supporter of you, and they're a big supporter of short track racing in this area. Bubba's Bout Broke podcast. They didn't pay me to say this. We don't have a deal or anything, but they are a great podcast racing in this area. They have drivers on. They tell their stories. They're telling the stories. They are doing their part to try and tell the stories of the guys here in this area. And I know that they've been a big supporter of your racing. And then Jackson McLaren, who you spot for, he races in the ARCA series. I know he's one of the hosts there. They do a great job. I wanted to make sure I shouted them out as a fellow podcast. But if you wanted to shout out any sponsors or give any news plans upcoming 2026 season, where people can find you racing at.
Yeah, so Bubba's About Broke, they've been a huge help. I mean, not even financially wise, they've pushed my name out there, and honestly, if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have been racing in North Carolina with Jeremy. They know Jeremy, and they put their word in for me to help me get there. JLH Mechanical, it's where I work, and anything racing related just tells me to go. He cares a lot about us, and I'm blessed to be there. Big Red Tax Service. So this guy has went out on a pretty big limb, and he bought me a Pro Late model. So we're gonna shoot for running the IHRA Pro Late Model Series this year, which now Pulaski's not looking super possible. We're still gonna try to make it. But we're hoping at the latest we'll be at the Newport race in April. So that's been huge. Also, SP Carburetors, all the guys with Man Motorsports, they've been huge help. And then Jimmy Reynolds Machine with the street stock. And then, of course, Rick Stamper. Rick Stamper has been behind me since almost day one. If it wasn't for him, I definitely wouldn't be doing this. And I mean, he's been a pinnacle of my racing for sure. He's taught me a lot. He's helped me a lot. And I mean, he really went out on the limb and put me in a race car at Anderson in a street stock at Anderson for my first race. So I'll forever be thankful for what Rick's done for me. And then of course all my family. I mean, blood or not, all my crew guys, everything, they've all done so much for me, and I can never thank any of them enough. And then people like you, Elijah, you go out, you buy your own pit pass, and then you spend your time at the racetrack taking these pictures and these videos for everybody. And I want to say this as a whole for the racing community that you shoot for. We appreciate you, what you do, and everything about it because I mean you help us get eyes on ourselves, and that means a lot to us.
I appreciate that. That's why I do it. That's really why I do it. That's why I started. And well, I started because I thought it looked cool, and then I found out that I could actually meet people, build relationships, and help out a little bit. And so it turned into way more than I ever thought it would. And so it's been fun. And like I said, I get to make friendships like ours and like some of our other guests that we will definitely be having on here, of just all the people that make up what makes motorsport so great. That's why we're all here. It's why we're talking about it. It's not, we talk a lot about NASCAR on the top level, but it's not just about that. Like that's the pinnacle. So that's the focal point, and we got to have that to have some trickle down. But it's the people that we want to build up to, to make it realistic. Like, we're not going to run in a podcast. We're not going to make it realistic for anybody in America at racing at a short track can go get a cup ride. We're not going to do that. But if we can have a small part in getting some eyes there that might give them a shot more than what they have now, that's what we're about. We're trying to celebrate racing, not just sit here and talk about it like we like to do so much. We want to celebrate it. So
Right.
I guess to echo my dad, Cole, thanks for coming on, being our first guest. It was very fitting that you were. My photography kind of started with you, and it was good. It was fun. It was kind of an unplanned conversation, but it was good. I liked where it went, kind of exploring some different avenues for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's different because a lot of people, they don't get to talk about the sim racing, or everything's just so centered around true short track racing that sim racing kind of gets pushed out and NASCAR gets pushed away, and our opinions on how things run around. I've got something good here. I'll say it that way.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, that wraps up. I mean, we went a little over the last time, but we were having good conversation, so you don't want to shut that down. We will see you guys next week. Again, every Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Working on getting Apple Podcast set up. That one's been a little bit tougher because you got to get like a approval and all that stuff. And as soon as we get all that through, we'll be on Apple Podcast as well. But for right now, Spotify, YouTube, Fast Motor Podcast. Check us out, and we'll see you guys next week.